Hey everyone, we've got a nice little nifty calculator here for you so that you can really start monitoring your monthly targets to hit your revenue goal. Okay, now how does this thing work? So, of course, we all predominantly, especially for those starting, want to be hitting that 10K goal mark. However, that doesn't just happen just because. This is all numbers based, it's all maths based. And so the important thing to really start assessing are your conversions. Okay. Example being, out of how many calls taken do you actually close? And this is the reason, again, why we do say to you, you need to be monitoring your metrics, your numbers, which is the same reason why we ask you to fill in your business update forms, because in those forms, that's exactly what you're evaluating. We're going through your numbers. So if your numbers are not hitting what's the requirement of your monthly targets or weekly targets, then of course you're not going to get to your 10K goal. So it's really important, again, to assess your numbers every single week and just evaluate it and see, are my conversions where they need to be at for me to hit my goal? Now, I'll go through a demo to explain how this all works. But the important thing is that when we're looking at our conversions here, these are the only numbers that you actually change. Okay, these are numbers you change, and then they will reflect themselves here, which are your monthly targets, and here, which are your weekly targets. So as an example, yes, here, as you can see, if you have a 10K revenue goal and your price point is at 2K, then you'll be needing 5 sales for that, right? So if this wasn't 10K and this was 20K instead, well, you need 10 goals, 10 sales to hit your revenue goal. And it's quite simple maths where, again, it's all numbers based. Everything doubles. So if you notice, yes, of course, you need double the amount of sales to hit your revenue goal. But that means you're going to need double the amount of book calls, double the amount of leads, double the amount of ad spend. Okay, so everything doubles because it just relies on simple conversions. Okay, now let's just put this back to where it was. And again, let's just run this through. But before I do, actually, again, these are the only numbers that you manipulate. The important thing here is that these are your monthly targets. It will show you how many calls you need to actually be taking, how many calls need to actually be booked because not everyone actually shows up, how many leads you need to get those number of book calls, and how much ad spend you then need to get that number of leads, right? So it's always a kind of, you need to spend this much to get this many leads, to get this many book calls, to actually take this many book calls, to then make this many sales. Okay. And those are the monthly targets. We then have what is the weekly targets. And the reason it says approximately is because it is just of a division of 4, right? So these are the actual monthly targets. And then here, just divide by 4. So as you can see here, this is like 5 sales, but yet this says this is 1 sale when technically speaking, it's 1.25. And so, of course, this is why it's an approximation, okay, because it's just dividing by 4. So pay attention to the monthly goals, but this, again, weekly figures, again, it's an approximation. It's still a very rough guide or measure of exactly where you need to be, okay? Now that we have an understanding of, what these numbers are and what it is, let's actually relate it back into the example, okay? So again, for most of you, you're looking for your 10K month, okay? And if you had a 2K price point, then you would need 5 sales. However, not everyone that you actually talk to, who you have a sales call with, will you close. Okay, so when we're looking at our conversions, we are looking at 20%, right? This is 20%, and this is as a minimum of what we want. We want a 20% close rate. So just again, bear in mind that only 1 out of 5 people will buy, okay, as a minimum. Again, this is where we want it at, okay, as a minimum. If it's less than this, then again, there is an issue. We need to address whether it be the messaging, whether it be your sales skills, what is going on. But this is just a constant refinement of the process, constant refinement of the messaging, constant refinement of your own sales ability. And hence, again, if you are someone that's seeing that this is quite low, it's going to require you to really invest your time, energy, and resources into bettering your skills to get this up. Really, really important because that's all business is, especially when it comes to sales. Sales is what drives your business. So invest into that skill set to get the results you want. Because again, this is a minimum. We would like this to be higher. We would like this to be 1 out of 4 people, 1 out of 3 people. But 1 out of 5, let's just leave it there. Because again, I'm just showing you the minimum requirement that we would like. Now, if it is 1 out of 5, then again, if we have 5 calls or 5 sales, sorry, that are needed, then you would need 25 calls taken to actually get that. Of course, right? Because you have 25 calls and 20% of them actually convert. That will give you your 5 sales. Now, when we're looking at what is calls taken, cool. That's kind of like nearly 1 a day. But again, not everyone shows up. So even if you wanted to take 25 calls, you would still need more than 25 calls to actually get the 25 calls. In this case, again, numbers are going to vary, but 70%, it's a good number to strive for. Would we like this higher, maximize? Would we like 100% show up rate? Yeah, absolutely. Okay. But I'm just showing you this again as a rough guide, right? All these numbers, let me tell you now, it's a rough guide. Okay. They're not concrete. It's not, no, they have to be these numbers. Every market's different. Every niche is different. Every single individual and your own sales ability is different, right? Everyone's at different stages, different places. You can have the exact same method, niche, market as someone else, and yet have different conversions to them. So you should always use this as a baseline to just know roughly where you would like to be at, but not as a, well, it has to be this, right? That's not what this is. This is just simply a rough guideline as to what it can be. And again, the important thing is to ensure that you're just in profit. But in this case, the show up rate, yeah, okay, look, 7 out of 10 people show up for the call. Okay, again, we need to maximize this. If you're getting less than that, okay, then it's just like, okay, so if it's at 50%, we need to really up it and try get it, you know, minimum that 70%. We would like 80%, 90%, 100%. At the end of the day, we would want all these numbers maximized, right? But if it was 70%, then the 25 calls that you would need to take, well, you'd actually need to book in 36, right? So just imagine that number, 36 calls booked in to get the 5 sales to get to your 10K revenue goal. That would be 9 calls booked in a week. So for some of you lot, when you want to be thinking about, okay, so to hit my 10K month and you're just starting out, well, you're only going to be getting maybe 1 or 2 book calls a week. But that's not going to get you to your revenue goal in the most likelihood, right? Because when we look at the maths, when we look at the numbers, yeah, like you're going to need a lot more book calls, right? So essentially, you know, having 1 book call a day is something that you should all be striving for. Because if you have 1 book call a day, it pretty much should equate to a 10K month. Again, as long as you're closing 1 call a day and you're closing 20%, you should be getting to that 10K month. Now, when we look at that, we then have to assess it. Okay, so to get that many book calls in, well, how many leads do we actually have? And this is the reason why we look into leads to book call rate. Because I genuinely say, look, you want 1 to 2 book calls out of 20 leads. Okay, so imagine that number. And again, this is 5% minimum, I would say, right? The minimum. That's what, again, just like we would like that as a minimum, because especially the 1, not the 2. If you're getting 2 book calls out of 20 leads, that's pretty good. But 1 out of 20 leads, yeah, that 5%, we definitely want to be trying to achieve that. And so that just gives us the numbers then, which is, well, if you needed 36 calls in a month, well, then through the conversion, you would need 714 leads per month. That's 179 leads per week. So again, when people are just starting off, of course, you're just getting in maybe 20 leads, okay, a week, however many, maybe 10, 20 leads a week. And so when you're looking at the numbers, you're thinking, right, well, I need to 10x that, because otherwise I'm not going to hit my revenue goal, right? So these, can you see, people, that this is exactly how you start forming or understanding the monthly targets that you need to hit to get to your 10K. So again, 5% is that kind of minimum. And when you have that, and by the way, that 5% of 36, like if anyone has just done the maths here, That should have been 720. But again, just because of the numbers and the conversions, it shows whole numbers here on the front end. But of course, like it's like 25 point something, and then therefore this is 36 point something else, and that's why this is 714. But let's just take it as it is, right? To get those 714 leads, of course, if your lead cost, for example, is $4, then that would mean that total it would be $2,500 that you would need to spend. Okay, because of course you need 714 leads. 714 leads times that by 4, 2,500. Okay, that's what you need. Again, just as a reference point, again, the lead cost for everyone, again, it's going to be different. Your own market, your own message, your own targeting, your own pictures that you use, your own banner headings, everything. Like this is everything that needs to go into this constant refinement of just getting, a good lead cost. Lead cost as well. It's not about the cheapest. Again, you still want quality there. So a cheap lead doesn't mean it's a quality lead. But even again, look, if you get $5 leads, okay, 5 to 10 in the health space, health or relationship space, that's good. Okay. And then honestly, look, 15 plus, right? It could be 15, 20, $30 for wealth if you're in the wealth space. Again, it all depends on your niche, your market. You just have to actually get your ad out there and see the stats. We then try to optimize it to try to reduce that cost while still maintaining the lead quality. So as you can see, when you go into this is everything that you need to go and look into, especially at advanced level. This is exactly what we start really honing into to optimize our lead costs so that we're getting that ideal client booking in, to optimize our show up rate, to optimize our closing rate. Again, the skill set that you'd have to be investing into yourself constantly. Sales is never ending. Sales is nuanced, very, again, distinction within distinctions. And you always need to be compounding on all of this, messaging, sales, all of it, to achieve 10K plus months. But again, this is just rough guide of what's good or what's bad. Like again, if you're in the health relationship space and you perhaps got a $20 lead, and again, it's just like, whoa, that's way too much. And even if we change this like that, of course, you wouldn't be profitable then, right? It wouldn't make sense. Therefore, you need to assess these numbers. But rough guide again. Again, don't take these numbers as, oh, it has to be these numbers. Take these numbers as, okay, we always just want to optimize it to the best of our ability. That's all it is. But ultimately, yes, that's it. It kind of starts giving you a good idea of what you need per month, per week. Because some of you, again, especially with ad spend, like Ed always told me this, right? Which is spend more. The more you spend, the more leads you get, the more book calls you get, the more sales you make. That's it. So when it comes to ad spend, yes, at the beginning, we recommend $5 to $10, okay? Because again, we're optimizing that lead cost, okay? We're just trying to see, are things optimal, right? And then we're trying to see at every single stage, okay, am I getting, my first 20 leads, did I get a book call in? Because that's what we're honestly looking for, right? Are we getting 5% minimum booking in? That's what we're striving for. And ultimately, yes, we have a $5 to $10 ad spend initially to test the ad out. And that's like $300 a month, $150 to $300 a month. But eventually, as you can start seeing, yes, with the numbers, yeah, to get to 10K months, you want to really be spending quite a bit of cash to essentially, in this very example, get $1, put $1 in to get $4 back, right? So 2,500 ad spend to get 10K back, you 4x your money, and then you profit 7,500. Awesome. Now, of course, when you're going through all of this, again, you need to be assessing your numbers on a weekly basis just to see where it's at, right? Again, your lead flow is going to be a key indicator of how many book calls you get. Because if you're only getting 20 leads, then you're never going to get the number of book calls that you want. I'm not saying as well, oh, well, just spend, 2K right out the gate. No, again, optimize, but the more you spend, right, the quicker it will come. So instead of spending 300, maybe you want to spend 600 a month, okay? you get a sale, you reinvest back into the ads, and eventually what you do want to be getting is a higher ad spend on a monthly basis so that you can generate the revenue goal that you want. So that's really it. And of course, ultimately, what we want to start doing is that as we're assessing our stats, we start monitoring and say, okay, cool. So, maybe you don't have a $4 lead cost. Maybe it is 10, right? You have let's say a quote unquote more expensive lead cost, but you know that they're quality. But then, when that happens, it's a case of cool. Well, if that was the case just like that, well, that would be really bad profit. However, maybe you start realizing, well, actually, because the lead's so good, the quality of the lead's so good, and my messaging is so dialed in that quite a lot of them book in. Okay? Quite a lot of them actually show up. And maybe my sales closing rate is so good that it's all good. Yeah. So can you see that here in this example, when you change the numbers, that's when, yeah, now you're spending 2K but getting 8K back, right? So this is the reason why we need to track these numbers, because when you track these numbers, this is when things change. These numbers, these conversions are completely different to what we started off with, right? But we're still profiting actually even more so. So again, it's a thing of these numbers, they can vary. They can vary for sure. The idea is that we just want them to maximize them on every single front to get the result that we want. And that's really it. At some point you might think, okay, I want to actually now increase my price point too. Cool. I want to, and that means that, okay, like everything is really optimized so well that it's minimal, or not minimal, but less ad spend that would have been required before per month. But then maybe you're saying, okay, well, now I want to get to the next level. I want to start getting 20K months. And then that's all it is. You just double the ad spend. If you want double the revenue, you just double the ad spend. It doubles the lead flow, doubles the calls booked in, etc., etc. Okay, so that is really it, people. There's nothing more to it. Okay, you can use this calculator again to be evaluating your own metrics, tracking it on a weekly basis, and asking yourself, where am I? Am I hitting what I need to be hitting so that I can achieve my revenue goal? Right? That's all it is. Again, when you spend ads, it's spend a bit. Okay, the more you spend, the more traction you are going to get. And then when you get that sale, you reinvest, and then you start pumping that into the ads. Okay, that's really, really it. Yeah. Go and apply, better the conversions. Always remember that you're bettering, it's a constant refinement process of bettering the message, bettering your sales skills constantly. It never stops. It never ever stops. You always refine the message, you always refine your sales process, the entire thing, your whole pipeline, constant refinement. So also worth noting, by the way, that yes, for example, the lead to book call rate. The more follow-up you do, right, that's how you get this up. So of course, 5% being minimum, but ultimately, yeah, if you could literally just say, you know what, I'm going to follow up intensely, especially at the beginning stages, to get as many book calls in where I'm selling the value of the call to ensure that they do actually show up. Like that's when numbers really start to change, right? 10%. That's when numbers really, really start to change, and you get more traction from the few leads that you do get at the beginning, right? So that is worth mentioning. But ultimately, yeah, again, doing everything you can to improve the close rate, to improve your show rate, to improve the leads to book call rate, all of this. It's a constant refinement, constantly. That's what your business will always be from here on out. All right. So go ahead, optimize, keep a track of your numbers, and keep us posted.